All right, for more, let's bring in the host of The Ben Ferguson Show and co-host of Verdict with Ted Cruz, Ben Ferguson, also New York Post political reporter Jon Levine. Great to have you both with us. Thank you so much for being here. So
good to be here.
Hopefully you watch Madison's report. You're seeing some of these pictures. The crowd is being described as thousands showing up in the Bronx to hear former President Donald Trump speak, and he's going to address some of the issues I think that are most important to them, including the economy, wages, black unemployment, but also the migrant crisis in our city and state.
Yeah, I think this is a really important and a smart move by President Trump. And just to set the stage for what the media is going to try to do, they're going to try to say, the mainstream media, this is a very small crowd. I would immediately push back and say, if Donald Trump, if this is the smallest crowd, it's bigger than any crowd we've seen from Joe Biden on the campaign trail. So by Democrats' definition of success, this is a massive success if you compare it to Joe Biden. Number two, I think the messaging on this is really important and a smart strategy from the Trump team. They're reaching out to African-American voters, minority voters, Hispanic voters. Are saying, we're going to come to you. We're not afraid to go anywhere, because we understand the pain that you're going through right now. We understand what's happening with the economy and inflation. We understand how hard it is that you're having to work just to basically survive, while you've got the other guy who's basically in hiding. Joe Biden is not doing major events. He's doing very, very carefully run, orchestrated small events where they can control the environment. This is an uncontrolled, authentic environment. And so when you go out there, whether you win or lose in New York, you're sending a message to every voter around the country that maybe didn't vote for you last time, that identifies a Democrat, or usually they vote for Democrats, saying, I'm listening to you. I understand what's happening in the economy. I understand your pain and suffering right now, and I'm willing to go anywhere at any time to talk to you and to help you. This is going to pay off big, I think, for Donald Trump tonight.
You know, to pick up on that point, John, so you do it. This is a majority minority community, and so you have a lot of Hispanics, a lot of blacks in this community. Donald Trump's been polling very well with those communities recently, and so I wonder, as we look at how this does play out, Donald Trump saying, I'm not going to leave anything on the table. If you look at the crowd there, I would have to imagine 80%, 90% of that crowd, they would identify as Democrats, to Ben's point. But the economy is so bad. Things are so horrible with their own finances. They're willing to consider someone else. And that Donald Trump comes and listens to them, makes them go, this could be my guy. Maybe I'm still a Democrat, but I'm going to vote for Republican Donald Trump.
Right. I mean, some people in your audience might remember when Ronald Reagan himself came to the Bronx. I believe it was in August of 1980. And, you know, that was another example where you had a solidly liberal state and a solidly liberal part of a liberal city. And the video footage is very wild. You can see Reagan talking to people, and it just looks totally bombed out. It's like Beirut, and he's being screamed at by people. But Reagan went on to win New York State that year in the 1980 election. And there was a spoiler in the race, as there are spoilers in this race, too. So, I mean, anything can happen. And as you mentioned earlier, the polls are really wild. You're seeing some where Trump is actually winning Hispanic voters and doing 20 and 30% among African-American voters. Now, I don't really know how much I even believe that, because it really seems so incredible. But, you know, you see crowds like this. And as you said, even if Biden is forced to spend money in New York, it's going to hurt him around the country. And, you know, Biden takes New York for granted. He comes to New York to raise money from billionaires, for, you know, the high dollar donors with Obama, Clinton, and then out the door to spend it in the swing states. Trump, you know, who has the benefit of being stuck here for his trial, is really making the most of it and is doing a big event with real New Yorkers. And, you know, we're going to see what payoff there is in the general election.
Those are all great points, John. Let's move to Biden's economy, though, because you both brought it up. Somehow our president still believes that his middle-out, bottom-up plan is working.
Growing it from the bottom up, the middle out, the bottom up, and when that happens, everybody does well, not the top down. Because when the middle class does well, the poor have a ladder up, and the wealthy still do very well.
Is that so, Joe? According to one recent poll, 67% of middle-class Americans say their income is falling behind the cost of living. Committee to Unleash Prosperity co-founder Steve Moore now joining the conversation. Steve was caught in traffic, but now joins us. Steve, this is interesting. Again, this administration continues to tell the American people things are going great.
Right.
You should love this economy. But the truth is, when you ask the American people, the middle-class Americans, Their pocketbooks don't lie. Their grocery bills and gas prices and rents, they don't lie. And they say, hey, I'm falling behind right now. That's a death blow to Joe Biden.
Yeah, Sean, you know, when the President Biden says that it's a middle out strategy, I would say it's a middle down and out strategy, because, you know, our calculations are that the average family has lost about $2,200 in purchasing power. That is to say, they are poorer today than they were 3 years ago. And one of the things that I think is, you know, amazing is that the Democrats keep talking about how their policies help, you know, the lowest income people reduce income inequality, and yet the people who are being hurt the most are people at the bottom of the economic ladder who cannot afford to buy their groceries. They can't even afford to go to McDonald's anymore because a Big Mac is so expensive. So this is something, and look, the rich are doing fine, Sean. It's really people, working class Americans, and there's a reason why Donald Trump is cleaning up with blue-collar Americans, because they're the ones who've suffered the most under Biden's big spending policies.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of anger, too, that so much accommodation, especially here in New York, for example, has been made for migrants that are coming to this country illegally, and yet community centers and community activities that blacks care about are falling to the wayside, and they are angry about that. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, guys. All right.